Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello, it's Lisa Jones. Welcome to Exploring Death. And today I have Susan Dyer with me. Susan was born clairvoyant and doubted her sanity for most of her life. But thanks to chronic Lyme disease, a near-death experience changed everything. She now believes that you are God, temporarily embodied and temporarily unaware. Her mission? To help you remember. Today, Susan is a champion of women's spirituality. She empowers awakening women through one-on-one spiritual mentorships, inspirational speaking, and her Facebook community, Divining Women. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, I am thrilled that you are here. I was telling you earlier that I feel like I manifested you because I was so excited to have an interview this week, and then suddenly there you were. So it's just perfect timing that you're here with me.
I think we manifested each other. It was just in time for me too.
That's great. That's great. Well, tell us about the chronic Lyme and then how the near-death experience ties in. I'm super eager to hear.
Sure. So I've been a spiritual seeker for forever, kind of out of necessity. Having been born clairvoyant, I really needed to find answers and find my sanity and find my strength. So I had already been in this world, but I had gotten sick, and it was, I believe, my body knowing kind of what my heart wouldn't let me know, which was I had really kind of grown fraudulent in every area of my life. I intentionally camouflaged myself a long time ago out of fear of people deeming me crazy and leaving. I'd really come to believe I was broken. And so my body took the brunt of that. And over time, I became extraordinarily ill. And the night I had that near-death experience, I'd been battling chronic Lyme for several years, though I'd had it since I was 11. And I was partially paralyzed. My hand and my foot were paralyzed. I'd had an IV port in my arm for months. I had to change those bags out twice a day. And the pain and the paralysis and the neuropathy. And I knew that particular night that I was going to pass, and my friends did too. And I'd been to the ER earlier that day, and they'd kind of kicked me out. And long story short, I was given a very beautiful, intuitive thought that I never could have come to on my own, which was, Susan, you have one last shot. Get out of your body and get help. And you know, when you get those intuitive thoughts, they kind of surprise you almost sometimes. It's like you're startled. And I thought, I've got nothing to lose. So my two friends, actually, they kept calling friends. They did not want to leave me. They knew that, we all knew that night was going to be it. And they finally left. I crawled upstairs and got in my bed. And for the first time that night, I astral traveled on command. I'd never been able to do it before. And I've never been able to do it since. You know, there was some kind of a divine motivation that I had that night. And I got out of my body, and I was terrified. I have been most afraid of the dark my whole life, because as a clairvoyant without any training or understanding, seeing what we see, which could be, I'm sure you know, anything. It could be several beings by your bed or a portal on your wall. You know, it's just, you never know. And the dark just has always felt so exposed to me. So immediately, it was my worst fear. I did not lose my personality throughout this whole journey. And I did see, I think manifested a tunnel of some sort. It was like, it was going so fast, it looked like a blur. It looked like a gray blur. And I intuitively knew in my astral body, just by my bed, that I had to edge into it sideways and kind of just get in like a blade almost. And I did that, and just a moment later, I was instantly in what is called the void. That is the most velvety, deepest silence and velvety, deepest darkness. And you really couldn't draw up a place of my greater fear. I mean, it was like darkness forever. at the time I went crazy with fear. And immediately I said, God, please take me somewhere safe and good. And boom, I was looking for like a cosmic AAA situation, like maybe like an angel or some kind of a light being. I never expected this. Suddenly I was with whatever God is, air quotes always, because how are you going to shove God into a word? But there God was, and the way that God appeared was endless rays of this blazing golden light. Like I was aware that it should have burned me up, but it was almost like God had somewhat made it a little pastel so it wouldn't, fry my fake astral eyes or something. And I just steeped in that light like a tea bag in a mug of tea, if you will. And I could viscerally, this is where all my newfound beliefs come from, was viscerally steeping in his presence. And the two things that were so clear to me, even through my personality, this vehicle of Susan Dyer, what was so definitively and viscerally clear was that God to me felt, even more than he did love, he felt like freedom. And I remember thinking, how strange. It was freedom. The love was too pure to really call love. It went beyond that. And it felt more like the human word we associate with freedom. And the other really crazy and twisted thought I had, I actually love this thought, but I know a lot of people think it's kind of strange, but I had the specific thought that I literally said this to myself, even though I wasn't speaking, I could have just murdered 10 people and it wouldn't have made any difference. That it did not matter who I was or how I lived or what I had done, that I would have been greeted in this same love and light, just the same. I viscerally knew this to be true. And in that same moment, I also realized that fear was wholly untrue. It was a man-made vehicle. And we had a convo, and it was without speaking. It was more like when a socket kind of plugs in. It was an effortless exchange. And I realized, and this is kind of what I share as my pivotal main belief, is that you and I, we're each of us God, temporarily embodied and temporarily unaware. And I had that knowing that though God and I were having an exchange that's a little bit misleading because there was no separation. I had just plugged into my home. And there was an exchange, but without separation. And his primary question was, do you want to stay or go? And that was really when my fear kicked up, because my intention had always been, get help, heal from this illness, get back to raising your kids. So the one thing I also want to say about this exchange with God was it was more intimate and detailed and effortless than it is with your best friend. I thought God was kind of a loving but vague energy. And I'm still shocked by God knew me like your best friend times 10, yet at the same time, our exchange was impossibly sweeping. It was so intimate, yet it included the cosmos in the exchange, if you will. And I said, no, I want to stay. I actually threw up like an IMAX screen, a picture of my two boys. And then in my human fear and my personality, I thought, what if God doesn't believe you? You need to show him in your actions that you're serious, as if there'd be some punitive effect. And I remember grabbing my cord, my silver cord, and starting to hand over hand, like hoist myself back to my body. And I even, again, remember thinking, Susan, how actually physically far away are you? Like how long does it take for one to pull themselves hand over hand back to their body when with God? I actually had that thought, like how far away? And that was all that was needed. And immediately I was with Jesus, and Jesus looked like Jesus, just like Jesus. And I am not in any religion, but I just love God with my whole being, and I love Jesus and everyone, the ascended masters, everything. So it was Jesus, and he was, stand floating there. And he asked me, do you want to get well? That's what he said. And I just screamed, and I grabbed his hands. So I was floating there with him. I grabbed both of his hands and I said, yes, I'm going to get well as fast as I can. I'm going to get well as fast as I can. I'm shouting it. And we're holding hands, and we start flying through this gorgeous emerald mottled green, like every shade of green, which I take to have been that kind of heart chakra healing energy. Archangel, Raphael, the heart chakra, we flew through this brilliant, just endless green colors. And then he asked me, this end part is definitely a little out there, but it's true. And I want to honor myself because I've done this my whole life, hide this. And he said, where do you want to go? And I got so excited, and I told him right away. And in an instant, again, it was really neat. We were outside of this massive spaceship, and he kind of leaned me in, and almost like in the medieval times where a knight's shield would have the insignia, and you could tell from the drawing on the shield, oh, he's from the house of ... And I'd astral traveled to ships before and had these experiences, but this was cute. It was like, I didn't realize there was like a coat of arms on the side of the ship. And Jesus was like, basically, is this good? And I looked, and I was like, yes. And then immediately I was inside the ship with one of my celestial guides, who I call Perry. And we had an exchange in there. And I woke up, and the next morning, and I did have a slight dip, and that caused its own crisis of faith. Again, that's really been the hallmark of my story, is navigating these crises. But my blood was stripped of all the metal in it, and I completely healed. Wow. I mean, no one, I'd been to probably 30 plus doctors by that point, and nobody could explain it. And I knew,
Right.
And I promised God then, that was the time I was like, I promise you, God, I'm done. I will live transparently. I was like, guide me, use me up. I promise you. And that had been my biggest fear, and since that time I've been taking steps to living in that way and living transparently and never minding what anyone thinks. Although I know that numerically speaking, some of this is definitely a part of the minority.
Right. Well, it's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. And I applaud you for being so transparent. I know after I started communicating with angels, I didn't tell anyone. I thought I was crazy. I mean, being a former CPA, for a big accounting firm, and just being very numbers minded. And even though I had faith, I'll put in air quotes, because I went to church and I was very, brought up very religious. But once I had my out of body experience and the shared death and seeing the other side and being in that pure, endless love and feeling at home, it's like I couldn't speak of it because I felt so separate from what's here on earth, or, the people, the just those doubting people. It's like,
it sounds like you're speaking fantasy.
Right. And you think it's almost like you're crazy, and you don't want people to think you're crazy, because
absolutely
it's super uncomfortable to feel that way. And yet, like you said, it's our truth. Like, we know once we've been there, we can't, it's our experience. And nobody can discount what we experienced. And I love that you're healing. I'm just curious how quickly, so you woke up, you said you had a little bit of a dip, but how soon were you feeling?
Immediately.
Really?
The 10 days following waking up, I was nearly 100% better. And again, this is coming from crawling around my house. I'm a single mom. I would make a mess of PB&Js on the floor, spread them out on paper plates, crawl back to the couch with my I was on a walker, or a cane at best for that year of 2017. And it was a wholesale healing. And then 10 days in, it dipped, and it did not go anywhere near to where it was. But I got to tell you, that was a dark boomerang for me. I thought, isn't the energy here, God, that you would never bring us this far to drop us. And I had a serious and rageful and completely defeated crisis. I mean, it was one of those times where I would be wailing and screaming at God. And I know well, I had known already that God would never mind that. You know, God doesn't, that, but I really meant it. I was like, why? And I still don't know the reason, but what I did find from that experience was somehow I gathered it together and was like, no, I will return. No, I was brought there perfectly on time for perfect divine purpose. Enough of this. And I did what I always do, which is I never give up. I've been through many dark nights of the soul. Like I'm talking rock bottom. And I had it out. I had my tantrum, my rage, my anger, my crying. And I was like, all right, let's go. And then it seemed that the moment I committed to being here on earth, because I had been traveling too far for too long. It had been too difficult. And when I genuinely seemed to commit, no matter what, it seemed that it almost like when you hold something underwater and you let it go and it just easily rises again. It just seemed like I easily went back to that same place of that 10-day period. I was slow to walk all the way. Like I remember for Halloween that year, and I was just talking about it with my former husband this year, that, you know, that I still didn't go, you know, the 2+ miles trick-or-treating. But I was like, that's cake. That'll come with time. Like I had to build up my body again. It really had just wasted away. But yeah.
Wow. And when was, so this was recent then? So
2017, August. It was actually in the middle of the Lion's Gate, which is an incredible time. Astrologically, it's when our Earth lines up with our sun and the planet Sirius. And there's so much energy going through. And a lot of people have pretty profound experiences during that time.
Wow. Well, yours was certainly profound for sure. That's incredible. Thank you again for sharing. So what is your takeaway, I guess, from this? I mean,
so much, right? Like,
yeah, so much. I know.
How do you put any of this into, but I really like the thing that I find I want to shout from the rooftops is that you are God. It's not just some separate proxy. You're made in his image and you're like a Xeroxed paper sitting on a desk. You actually are a God spark. And most likely if you're watching your channel or working with you or watching my stuff, you're a light worker. You're here on purpose to serve. And not only are you God, I think the thing that I again want to just scream is that there are no rules. You are wholly loved just as you are. It actually is impossible. There is no judgment. There is none. There is labels and duality down here, you know, but there's nothing but capital L love and capital L light and freedom, which is how the word that I really attributed to it. Like you can't mess up with God. You could hate God. You could never think of God once. It's like, but that's what I would want to say too. It's like, I hear so much about rules, like do this or else, or if you do that, then you are this. And that was, again, it's like to have that thought while steeping in God's presence and still being terrified, to actually, to have that thought, I could have just murdered 10 people right now. Like what a memory bubble. Like that was on purpose. That was my literal quote. I could have just murdered 10 people. And I had built my life around fear. And to know this, to know that fear is wholly untrue was like a completely shattered everything that I had really grown to hold true. And it started, like you said, like my parents would be like, you're not seeing these things. That's not real. Go back in there every night, just crying, like terrified, you know, like I must be crazy, you know? So, and now I'm like, I don't shirk from any of it. And I see the beauty of it. I know that it was all divinely purposed, and I can help other women navigate out of their dark nights of the soul. but there is just freedom. Like, I just wish to liberate the idea of God. I think that's what it is, that everything is God and we are all one and everything is okay. I don't know. That's probably a little general, but if you know what I mean, it's like no rules, no judgment.
I really appreciate your words about that, because one of the things that I feel consistently comes through when I channel from the other side is that people are saying, oh my gosh, if I had only known that there was nothing to be afraid of, that I could have just gone so much further and gone so much farther. And, you know, I think our society keeps us in these fear bubbles where everybody's just kind of cowering and just trying to get through the day to pay their bills and to not lose their job and to, you know, just do all of this, the hard work of being here on earth. And yet if we could release that bubble of fear and step into who we really are and express ourselves, then all of those other things just come so much easier, you know, because that's when the divine shows up and delivers you into your abundance and into the truth of who you are. And you're perfect exactly as you are.
Yes. Yes. It's like when you do drop into that, and if you are able to like unleash your true self and live fearlessly, authentically, it's almost like you open the channel for just the, you know, everything in the universe to come pouring through. I had been living so intentionally twisted and folded in and dishonestly. I mean, I couldn't have even told you my favorite food. I barely spoke by the end of my marriage. I mean, I really had to like rehabilitate every part of my being. And this kind of an experience, I guess, is what I needed to get that done. Because it took what it took, but it did it. And I looked at everything again with completely new eyes. And I was like, it's game time, Susan. What are you doing here otherwise?
Right. I love that so much. And it's so true that we lose ourselves. In everybody else, in our jobs, in our relationships, in our children, in just everyday life. And so when you lose yourself, then it's like you're cut off from God. You're not plugged in anymore. And so of course, why or how could the abundance flow to you, or the synchronicities of life just flow effortlessly when, like you said, you're twisted into something that you're not? And so by releasing all of that and standing firm in who you are, that's when you're plugged in, and then boom, just that's when things start to unfold, and the miracles and the
adventure, you know, it's
adventure.
like the
Absolutely.
adventure.
The freedom.
Like we're meant to be expanding and pressing outward and having an adventure here, and obviously keeping an outgoing circuit of love. But you know, it's like, where's the joy? Where's the sense of wonder and the curiosity? I want all that now.
Right.
And especially as empaths, I think so many of you know, the people who I'm sure that we run into and we work with are empaths, and that can be so tricky too. It's like almost like a survival mechanism to try to manage the emotional temperature of everyone around you. And it's exhausting, and it ultimately doesn't serve you, but it feels like it's the right thing to do. I feel like almost every woman I work with is an empath and is on a path of learning like martyrdom is not better service than upholding their own sovereignty too. You know, that there's to be sovereign, take care of yourself, is actually a stronger form of service than just bleeding out all the time in the hopes of you know, it's like, have you seen that pattern? I'm not sure, like,
for
that
sure.
those women I attract many times, they're empaths, and they're not aware of how much they're expending their energy for things that are not really opening and expanding them, though they think they are, because their heart, they're like, but I'm helping.
Right. I find that true for myself. I can speak for myself. Because when I'm with somebody, I have such an open heart that whoever I'm with, I want what you want. I mean, it's like I've lost my sovereignty, and I've just become your biggest cheerleader, and agree to do whatever it is, whatever your program or your you know, whatever you want to do. I'm just there gung ho. And then I walk away and I have a little distance from them, and I'm like, wait, what did I just agree to? Or what did I, I'm like, I don't want to do that. What am I doing? And so I think, again, with an empath, your open heart can it just takes you with whoever shows up. And then, so it's really taken me a lot to learn my sovereignty and to say, you know, let me think about that, because I want to say physically, I don't know if physically is the right word, but it's almost, I don't know what it is, but I have to step away to really process and see, is this really what I want to do? Or is this just me connecting?
Me too. And I really do. I think that's because when you do have a physical buffer, if there is a bit of distance, or, you know, you hang up the phone, it's like you almost get your wits about you again a little bit better. You're not as enmeshed in that moment. I need that too, oftentimes. And now, just like you, I know to say, I'll give that some thought and I'll get back to you. Because I know it's like that moment you even end the call or you step away, a bit more of your inner clarity comes settling in again. And you're like, okay, wait a second. Let me look at this now from a correctly oriented perspective.
That's right.
I'm so with you though. I have that need too. It's like you want to help at the expense of just going any which way. You find yourself on some side path over there, like, you know, $1,000 in, or, you know, several years in, and you're like, how did I get here?
Right.
Where did I go?
So it's so important for empaths, especially, to step away and to get their wits about them, as you said, and really feel into what is it that we want, because that's where you lose yourself, and that's not what we're here to do. But I think that's part of our lesson too, right? Is to really, to find our strength and our power, and to just, it's probably a soul learning. And maybe that's, you know, we've come back so many times that this is our adventure this time, is to see, oh, let's see if I can hold my own.
Yeah.
Well, totally. That's great. Well, can I pull a few cards for you?
I would love that.
Awesome. Let's see what,
this is perfect for me. I'm starting, you know, my spiritual business, and still growing through my fears about, am I capable enough? And, can I take care of myself? And can I, you know what I mean? There's so many fears connected with this.
I love it. Well, and it's so perfect what you were saying, because the first card is courage. And that, in the 3-card spread, the first one is usually where the blockage card is. So how perfect. That's perfect. That you're talking about starting your business and really, really stepping out and being fully you. And it's that courage, and you know, the guides, and my arms are just tingling with energy coming through. But first of all, they want to say, you are so courageous. I mean, you've been through so much, and to be so proud of yourself, and to step back and really honor where you've come from, and just to really take that in and congratulate yourself for coming so far. And so then your action card is focus, which again, I just feel just this beautiful energy of love just coming right to your heart center.
You know, I'm like tearing up. I'm trying not to totally lose it right now.
Yeah. Oh, you're so sweet. But yeah, it's just about focus. And again, they're saying focus on what you want, regardless of anybody else. Like, just let go of any other thoughts or any other, you know, input from others. It's really about going within and focusing on what you want, because you're here to create and to allow yourself to be seen, and to express yourself while you're here on this planet at this time, right here, right now. And then the outcome, which I absolutely love, is truth.
Oh, love that. I mean, that's, you couldn't know this, but 2 of my primary guides are Artemis and Athena, who is the goddess of wisdom and truth. And that is, like, I always say, capital T, truth. I'm like, I trust in that. And it's amazing that that's not a coincidence. Like, you know, it's like, oh, that's Athena, and basically my greater energetic self connecting with you.
Yes, for sure. And and that's your outcome. So just that, you know, and I just see this tower of truth just, you know, coming from you and emanating from you. And that's what your sole purpose is here to do, is to share the truth. And that's just going to unfold and expand. And, you know, the abundance is just going to flow your way, because you're being honest and truthful. And then it just comes back, you know, and they're showing me the infinity sign, you know, it's just endless. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
That's amazing. That truth card and the courage card. I mean, you know, that pretty much, you know, I feel like we always incarnate into the perfect contrast to launch us into where we wanted to go. And that courage and truth kind of axiom is, the courage and the fearfulness, and
That's
the
right.
truth and the disingenuineness. It's like those are two axioms that have been with me since I was a kid. So it's amazing that you just zeroed right in on that so effortlessly.
Yes. Well, I give all the credit to the divine that just, I like to be able to be that conduit for them. So, well, how else, is there anything else that comes to mind that you wanted to mention or talk about before we tell people how they can be in contact with you?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say is that if somebody is wondering, well, how can I embody more of my soul self or true self? And there is a little practice I like to do, and it's so easy, but it can move mountains. And that is to take just maybe a minute or two each day, if you're new to all this, and sit in the silence with your hand on your heart and allow yourself to feel whatever is there. And just that practice of honoring yourself and witnessing your inner self and allowing it to be perfect just as it is, in my experience, has really rippled outward with such power, even though it seems maybe like such a brief and gentle exercise. And I would just offer that out to anyone kind of new at this and wondering, well, how can I embody, my greatest divine self and most divinely inspired life is that exercise.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Well, good. Well, and I know we'll have all the links for people to be in contact with you, but go ahead and mention where people can find you.
Yes. So I have my website, susandyer.com. And if you are a woman and you would like to join my group on Facebook, we do live Q&As, and it's a very supportive environment that's called Defining Women. I did an energy read for our audience today, connecting with those watching live and the replay members. And you have it's so funny. I do a 3-card read too, just like you. When I saw your practice, I was like, of course. I'm like, so I do 2 cards, one for energy going out, one for energy coming in, and then a 3rd angel oracle reading. And it's such a mirror of yours, right? And so I did that for our audience, and we'll have an email address field below, and you can get that video that I've done.
Wonderful. How sweet. That's going to be amazing. So be sure to go to the website and click on the link to go to Susan Dyer's website, or whatever the link is, and then you'll be able to get this special reading that Susan did for you listening today, whenever that is.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Susan. This is just, I just feel like it was so meant to be. We're so divinely aligned, and I'm just thrilled.
Clicked into place.
Absolutely. Boom. And it was there. So thank you for your time, and your story is amazing. And what a gift you are to us here on earth. Thank you for coming back and sharing your beautiful self with us.
Thank you for this too. Doing the same thing. I love what you're doing. I feel like I'm just very grateful that we did meet in this manner. It was so perfect and easy, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you. And thank you for listening today on Exploring Death. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.